In the vast expanse of Earth's natural landscapes, an enigmatic cultivar has silently spread its roots, altering ecosystems and baffling botanists. But where did this sinister species come from? And how can it be stopped? The Bradford pear, originally hailed as an ornamental marvel, it was introduced to North America in the 20th century, but its controversial existence is rooted in a noble history. In the early 1900s, American orchards of the French pear, Pyrus communis, were under attack from a bacterial disease known as fire blight. The fire blight is recognizable by its blackened leaves and branch tips. But as botanists searched for resistant cultivars, they made a frightening discovery. Of all the cultivars of pear that we have, and there are a lot, there's over 3,000, okay, only one showed resistance to the fire blight, and that was Pyrus caloriana. Pyrus caloriana, aka calorie pear, is native to China and Vietnam, is resistant to disease and even fire blight. But could this cultivar from the Far East save our American orchards, as early horticultural enthusiasts once believed? In about 1916, a man by the name of Frank Meyer was sent to China to locate this species and send back seeds. He was successful, and he sent back thousands of seeds. Over the years that followed, the USDA would plant those seeds in large numbers to test resistance to the fire blight. Eventually, scientists found that this cultivar was best used as a rootstock for grafting the vulnerable French pear, giving it blight-resistant capabilities. But how did this seemingly beneficial act result in a monstrous invasion? Glendale, Maryland, 1952. A research scientist by the name of John Creech, who worked at the USDA Plant Introduction Station, began to take notice of one of the 33-year-old calorie pear trees that were of the original seed stock sent back by Frank Meyer. And what he began to notice was the lollipop pear shape, the growth habit of the tree. What he began to notice was the shiny green leaves. And he also began to notice the lack of 3-inch thorns that were so prevalent on the calorie pear. Recognizing its potential as an ornamental landscape tree, John Creech began grafting scions onto the calorie pear rootstock. Creech would name this new cultivar Bradford pear in honor of late horticulturalist F.C. Bradford. In 1954, two Bradford pear trees were planted as part of a street tree study, and by 1961, these things were commercially released all over the eastern U.S., and they were planted everywhere. But by the early 1980s, problems with the Bradford pear started to emerge. As you can see by this picture, the tree forms really tight crotches, and this makes the tree weak as it ages, and as it gets old, it's very susceptible to breaking and just splitting apart in a windstorm. Over the next few decades, additional P. caloriana cultivars were introduced. These were billed as improved replacements, but this gave rise to a new problem. Bradford pear trees were considered to be sterile because pear trees need differing genetics in order to cross-pollinate. Now, since the Bradford pear is basically genetically identical to the original, this meant that none of the Bradford pears could cross-pollinate. But the introduction of new cultivars gave the Bradford pear reproductive partners. Also, these trees are pretty hard to kill. If you cut this down, next year 8 or 9 shoots are going to stick right up out of the ground from the roots. By the mid-2000s, calorie pear trees were being noticed in wild places and along roadways. They had been undetected until they began to flower in their third or fourth year. So now we have a real problem. As these trees proliferate, they crowd out and shade out all of our native plants. And this is creating a food desert for our pollinators and our birds. But what could be done about this growing menace? You have to dig them up when you find them and they're young. You have to burn them out when they are in bloom to kill the blooms to prevent pollination. And you have to make sure that the roots don't send up shoots from the ground. This is the only way. The story of the calorie pear is a great example of good intentions gone awry. But as the calorie pear continues its conquest of Earth's landscapes, one question remains. Can we actually win this horticultural battle? Perhaps the answer lies not in the stars, but within the branches of a seemingly innocuous tree, silently shaping the course of our planet's history.